So I'm here to talk about women in technology, a little out of sync for what's happened in the afternoon, but it's no secret that women are underrepresented in the computer sciences. That's the world I'm in. I'm actually the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of San Leandro, and so we're cultivating a tech and innovation ecosystem. So the innovation part's cool, but what about the tech? What about the work that actually has to get done there? So schools, parents, society are often blamed by tech executives for failing to encourage girls and women to enter into the tech world. Increasingly, however, the voices of women are telling a very different story. I've worked for several decades as an economic development professional, focused on tech attraction, business expansion, retention, the usual stuff. And I can tell you, oh, it's definitely a man's world. I can count on one hand the number of C-level women executives that I've worked with at these companies. And this dominance, believe it or not, is more evident. Nowhere is this dominance more evident than going to the women's bathroom at a tech conference. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? No line. In fact, you're lucky if there's a woman in the bathroom. This is a very unique experience for most of us women. So while it's awesome not having to jiggle around in a long line waiting my turn, it's also disturbing evidence of how underrepresented women's voices are in the tech world. So women are actually being pushed from the computer sciences, and the course of voices giving light to that truth are growing. I'm here today to share my experiences to give my light to that truth. It actually began in my childhood home, where the dark secret involved truth about our father. With 4 daughters, the prig joke was, poor Bill, never had a son. My sisters and I knew that we could never be good enough. The 3-day-old firstborn son, who died 1 year before I was born, was the icon that we could never, ever live up to. The big secret? My dad was a predator. He forced himself sexually on 2 of his daughters over a number of years. With the other 2, his behavior, his touch, his demeanor, his speech was often just demeaning, sexualizing, and just very demeaning. My mother. Where was my mother in all of this? Well, she was so overwhelmed by her own powerless relationship with this man. To this day, she cannot acknowledge what her husband did to her daughters. She was one of 13 brothers and sisters growing up in Holland during World War II. And I've heard stories of the rape and the sexual abuse and fear she and my aunts experienced growing up, from respected family members, from priests, from soldiers. They felt powerless. I'm also a survivor of stranger rape. It occurred at knife point on a dark Oakland parking lot coming home from work one December evening. The male police officer who came to my home that night later admonished me for leaving the scene of the crime. You shouldn't have left your car. You should have gone to the BART station agent to report the crime. I remember feeling tremendous shame. I had done something terribly, terribly wrong. I was to blame. 2 weeks later, I noted that my rapist description had been removed from the BART station window. The BART board doesn't want BART writers to think that the system is unsafe, the detective assigned to my case told me. And I'll deny this in a court of law. The rapist was never identified. Powerless. I felt powerless. And in spite of being the random victim of one man's rage, I felt blamed by the authorities who were assigned to protect me. In my professional life, I watched this pattern repeat itself over the years. In line for a promotion at a prominent San Francisco financial institution, my supervisor refused to give it to me. With a nasty sneer on his face that I'll never forget. I told you you should be nice to me. Believe me, I knew exactly what he meant. At a different job, now this is amazing, right? But I'm having to tell you this is not an unusual experience for women. At a different job, I experienced a predatory sexual relationship with a male supervisor. As his subordinate, he was served very well by this relationship. Who could I tell? The lies and the powerlessness, frankly, almost killed me. I suffered a seizure. His response to my illness, he was pissed. "You abandoned me." Literally, that was the phone call I got. So working for the same city, and believe me, it's not the progressive and supportive city I currently work for. The efforts of me and my largely female co-workers were consistently invalidated and squashed by the male bureaucrats. I was told in an email by one director that he didn't appreciate cowgirls riding the range, whatever the heck that meant. We watched as an entire staff of experienced and vocal female planners were eliminated from the budget. Oh, and one man. The one male planner was hired back weeks later and still works at this city to this day. None of the women were ever rehired. Yes, we reported the abuse to HR. We followed the rules. They listened kindly, confided that they had received many such complaints, and then told us there was just nothing they could do about it. Just deal with it, we were advised. You're making things much harder for yourself. Play the game. Change is coming. It'll get better. The silence, all we got was silence, and it never got better. Powerless. We felt powerless, and we felt blamed by the authorities assigned to protect us. So let's re-examine, in light of that, the subject of women in technology. There's a startling statistic drawn from a 2008 Harvard Business study. Among the women who join the field, 56% leave by mid-career, a disturbing attrition rate that is double that for men. They leave for motherhood, you might say. You might confidently tell me. The study tells a very different story. Hostile and predatory macho cultures. Fully 63% of these women experience sexual harassment. Isolation, often the only woman on the team. And mysterious career paths, see also macho culture and isolation, are cited as the main reasons women leave their tech jobs. All right, well, the tech world is blooming. Who cares if tech is being dominated by the male perspective? Okay, well, let's look at the bottom line. Women are consumers of technology. If they don't like it, they won't buy it if it doesn't work for them. Ironically, investing in women as tech entrepreneurs is actually good for the bottom line. Research by Sidney Padnos, a San Francisco venture capitalist, shows that venture-backed startups run by women use, on average, 40% less capital than male-run startups. These startups are increasingly involved in successful initial public stock offerings. Okay, so it's starting to make financial sense. Her research also shows that gender diversity to be particularly valuable where innovation is key. Organizations most inclusive of women in top management achieve a 35% higher return on equity and 34% total return to their shareholders versus their peers. And then, if you don't like those numbers, there's the purely practical perspective. There are simply more tech jobs being created that can be filled by available talent. According to the National Center for Women in Informational Technology, some 1.2 million computing jobs will be created by 2022. Yet US universities are producing only 39% of the graduates needed to fill these jobs. Data from the same source also reports, these are amazing numbers to me, 57% of all professional occupations in the 2013, that's last year, US workforce are held by women, yet women only hold 1/4 of the professional computing occupations. In 2013, 56% of AP test takers were female. Women AP calculus test takers, 46%. Female AP computer test takers, 19%. Something doesn't connect. So the data shows that women are dominating some professional industries. Why hasn't the tech industry kept up? Interestingly, computer science wasn't always a male domain. In fact, initially the word computer meant women. In a stunning documentary released in May at the Seattle International Film Festival, The Computers tells the story of 6 brilliant young women who in 1946 programmed the first all-electronic programmable computer, the ENIAC, a secret World War II project run by the US Army. They learned to program without programming languages or tools because it didn't exist. By the time these women were finished, ENIAC ran a ballistics trajectory, a differential calculus equation in mere seconds. Yet when the ENIAC was unveiled to the press and public in 1946, the women were never introduced. They remained invisible until today. So as programming gained prestige, women were pushed out. In 2012, 57% of undergrad degree recipients were women, while only 18% had undergrad degrees in computer sciences. Compare this to 1985, when 37% of computer undergrad degrees were awarded to women. And 64% represents the meteoric decline between 2000 and 2012 of first-year undergrad women interested in computer sciences. The data shows that women are increasingly disinterested. Sheryl Sandberg, COO of Facebook, challenged women in her 2013 book, Lean In, to submit to the initial rules of a tech corporate culture created by men. The argument? Women can, over time, make changes from within that male-dominated structure. It won't work. It has never worked, not in abusive relationships between men and women, and not in the professional world. The biggest problem with leaning in, it looks very much like submission. So leaning in holds out a special false hope for women in the tech industry. At a recent TechCrunch Disrupt hackathon, two grinning young Australian dudes stepped up to the platform and to introduce TitStare, an app where you share photos of the tits you're staring at. Some in the audience laughed and cheered. Imagine being a woman in that audience. Imagine her walking around the rest of the day wondering, in that environment, what men were looking at and her feelings of powerlessness. So we get to the core source of feeling powerless for women. It's fear of violence. 30 to 40% of the internet is estimated to be made up of pornographic materials. In the tech world, dominated by nerdy young men whose work and social skills are largely developed by their internet experiences, is it a leap to suggest that the bro culture objectifies women and leads them to behavior that makes their female counterparts feel, at best, like outsiders? What human being wants to work in an environment when her less than enthusiastic reception for an app like TitStare is derided with, "You just can't take a joke"? I'm telling you, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Dealing with this type of ongoing assault is just plain exhausting. And why would any human being take this? Why should we have to? But here's the good news. I met a young college graduate recently who had left her first tech startup internship. One of five women and 40 men. Staff lunch sometimes included trips to the local strip bar. 5 o'clock routinely was beer shot hour, where interns were challenged to top each other's shot intake. There was no one to protest to, she tells me. She wasn't sure HR staff actually existed or that they would take her complaints seriously. As a woman, she knew that harassment was just part of the tech bro culture that she had to deal with. Today, this young woman is kicking off development and fundraising for her own tech startup with an all-women team. An ambitious and smart young woman, she now realizes she can create her own tech culture, not by leaning in, not by submission, but by standing straight and tall and becoming the leader she is looking for. So, no. I know, not all men harass women, but all women have been harassed by men. Every single woman. And we can no longer be silent about this truth. In developing this talk, it was suggested to me that I put disempowerment in a context that the men in the tech community could understand. The bullying that nerdy kids often receive at the hands of their cooler peers. I struggled with this suggestion. I really struggled with it because it so aptly illustrates the problem when dealing with abused versus abusers. Harassment that women receive from men in the tech world should not have to be framed from the viewpoint of male suffering to give it legitimacy. When hearing about suffering from a group of people whose perspective you don't and can't share, and I'm thinking even Ferguson at this moment, at some point you're just going to have to frickin' accept it. You have to take their word for it. There is no one shared human experience because we come from different levels of privilege. And it is the responsibility of the privileged to remember that. So in the bro culture that dominates the tech world, this is especially true. No, not all men, but all women. The harassment and suffering of female human beings isn't about men and their feelings. There is no reason to relate personally to feel empathy. As a member of a privileged and protected group, you can begin right now, right here, to break the silence. So imagine a world where women feel safe. I feel inspired by Marco Cochrane's vision, where his sculptures, Bliss Dance and Truth is Beauty, provide us a glimpse into the potential of a world where women stand tall, where we are free to dance, to move to our own natural rhythms without the nagging, relentless, consistent fear of violence, sexual harassment, sexual assault, stalking, rape, dating, and domestic violence, that our collective silence, it protects. So we can start to break the silence today. To all the survivors in this audience, please join with me in standing tall for ourselves, for our daughters, and for our sons. Please rise up and stand with me if you or anyone you know has experienced the violence of sexual harassment, sexual assault, stalking, rape, dating, or domestic violence. Please stand with me if you have experienced any of that or you know anyone who has. This takes bravery that you can't even, I understand what it takes. Imagine a world where women feel safe. By breaking the silence here today, we light the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Okay.